Thanks for joining us again, everyone. This is the last round of Swiss. I'm Arnie Wolf, once again joined by co-caster Dragonite. And this is going to be very entertaining because we are about to see Blood Moon Ursaluna wreak havoc on our screens. We've got Abhyu versus Edward here, and you're going to see their teams pop up in a minute. But one thing I also really like here is on both sides, we have, it's one of my all-time favorite Pokemon in this format, Throat Spray for a Giraffe. And there are the teams. We're going to see Abhyu on the left here with Farigiraf, Incineroar, Whimsicott, Fluttermane, Ogerpon, Wellspring, and Ursaluna Blood Moon. While Edward is on the right with that Farigiraf, Incineroar, Fluttermane, Urshifu. This Urshifu, by the way, is Rapid Strike, in Rillaboom, and Raging Bolt. So it is pretty standard balance with two different modes of playing. You do have, of course, Fluttermane with Icy Wind, which has just been one of the most, if not the most, primary speed control in the entire format. You also have Trick Room with Farigiraf, so you can also play mind games. Meanwhile, Abhyu playing a different kind of double speed here with Whimsicott Tailwind, and of course Farigiraf with Trick Room. So a couple options there. Abhyu's Fluttermane is the Choice Specs variant, which is pretty solid because you have ways to counter opposing Fluttermanes, you know? You have Shadow Ball. You can go for Terra Fairy Moonblast, all of which are pretty solid. It's also very interesting because this is a anti-Bolt for a Giraffe, because it's Terra Fairy, and it is means it is completely immune to any Dragon moves, so Dragon Pulse, and because of its ability Armor Tail, it is immune to Thunderclap. And Edward's Raging Bolt is the Calm Mind variant, which means, of course, Thunderclap, Dragon Pulse. It is anti-Bolt. You literally wall out the Bolt. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see no Raging Bolt come out specifically because of that. This team also very interesting, though, because I was talking about Abhyu a bit earlier about this, and instead of Ursaluna Blood Moon, it is one of those Pokemon that you do want that Terra Boost right away. And we are going to see Ursaluna and Raging Bolt. We are going to see the Raging Bolt. And speaking of Ursaluna, there it is on Abhyu's side with the Farigiraf. But like I said, it's one of those Pokemon you want to just Terra right away, and there is a couple interesting plays that you could go for here. Calm Mind's very good considering Abhyu's Pokemon are both special attackers, and we do have Incineroar and Ogerpon, which are relatively offensive, but like not super duper offensive. The Terra Fairy is going to help you in case you do see a U-turn or any move from Raging Bolt, because it just resists it. And it does put Edward in an awkward spot with a Raging Bolt. However, there is a few options around this. Like going for Surging Strikes into the Farigiraf is just going to deal a lot of damage. And switching out into Ogerpon is really very solid because if you do go for anything other than close combat, it's really, it's going to be useful, you know? We are going to see the Terra. This is obvious for Giraffe, and it goes to Fairy. So no Terra on Edward's side, but not necessarily needed at the moment. Don't really need extra damage when an Ogerpon's coming out on the field. And we are going to see Raging Bolt just go straight for the Protect. A little bit surprised we didn't see the Calm Mind, but I guess it makes sense. Don't want to really get hit with a surprise attack from that Blood Moon Ursaluna. And we do see U-turn, so that is really nice positioning for Ogerpon at the moment, because whatever really comes out is going to be able to get hit with an Ogerpon hit, right? Whether it's an Ivy Cudgel or a Horn Leech, depending on what comes out. I believe here we're going to see Farigiraf on Edward's side. It could be the Rillaboom, but I'm not sure really if Rillaboom would be the most useful at the moment. So yeah, I was gonna say, it doesn't feel right when you have, you could go for Wood Hammer, but can't really hit the opposing Farigiraf. And instead of going for Trick Room, we just see a straight up Hyper Voice getting the boost, which is very smart on the Abhyu side, because you don't really need to click Trick Room at the moment. Sure, Blood Moon is going to benefit heavily from that, but at that same time, you really would rather get your Hyper Voice up before anything can happen. Not to mention, this Incineroar does have a few nice options. It is Assault Vest, so it's going to take whatever hits come out from Edward's side. Don't forget that his Raging Bolts do usually any meaningful damage with these sets. You need to go for at least a single Calm Mind. And that's going to be then negated by the Assault Vest that the Incineroar is holding. Also, not to mention that you do have kind of a Terra problem because you can't just go knock off into the opposing Farigiraf if you're Abhyu and just hope that they don't go for the Terra if you're Edward. We do see the Rillaboom switch on in for the Raging Bolt slot, while Farigiraf stays on the field. Both of them do, and a 3 Hyper Voice doing a lot of damage on to Edward's side, coupled with another Hyper Voice. We also get the information that Abhyu's Farigiraf is either Speed Tide or faster. And that's pretty useful, if you ask me. Now, there is one thing, though, and we are going to see again that it is faster here, so yeah. But it's a weird spot because we saw the swap out from Ogerpon first. It means this Rillaboom is not intimidated. It also can't go for any super effective damage. It could go for a Wood Hammer, but we are going to see this for a Draft Protect. So you're kind of just focused on the for a draft. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Terra on Edward's side for Fairy to just make sure that you don't get hit with the super effective move. Oh, actually, no, it's the Rillaboom to Fire. Doesn't want to get hit with the Flare Blitz. But I think that might end up costing Edward here if Abhyu went for what I think was the right play, which is to U-turn out on the Rillaboom and back into the Ogerpon here. And we are seeing for Direct Protect there. Very good Protect there on Abhyu's side. That was like kind of a massive Protect because this Wood Hammer would 100% knock out thanks to the Helping Hand. Let's also keep in mind it's the Helping Hand for on Edward's side, which is very fascinating. It does not have Protect. It's Sacrifice Protect. Yep, Hyper Voice, Psychic, and Trick Room. We are going to see that swap out, which of course is going to be into the Ogerpon because now it has super effective damage onto that Rillaboom, which allows you to go for a Ivy Cudgel Hyper Voice, and nothing can stop that. Absolutely nothing can stop that. Even if you want to switch into Urshifu, if you're Edward, you're going to take a Hyper Voice, and that coupled with Ivy Cudgel might be just enough to knock out, even through the resist on Ivy Cudgel. So I think, yeah, if you're right now, if you're Edward, you're just like, oh no. You kind of have to hope that your Fridrop is able to survive a hit. Because you do put pressure. Abhyu could have gone for the call of going for like a double up onto the Fridrop on Edward's side, but I think it's still just safe to play this out with the Ivy Cudgel. It doesn't do a ton on the Raging Bolt, but the Hyper Voice coupled with it is going to do a decent amount, especially since it's not Assault Vested. But we are going to see a Hyper Voice or Psychic return from Edward's side, which is a pretty big hit because it is +1. But the Fridrop lives it with 9 HP! And the Raging Bolt, being the fastest Pokemon on the field, cannot do anything. Absolutely nothing because of that Terra Fairy. What a play there. Hyper Voice coming back out a double up into that right slot. Very smart. As I mentioned, that is a Helping Hand for a Draft. It does not have Protect, so you're free to just go for that. And worst case scenario here is you get Thunderclap or Dragon Pulsed, probably Dragon Pulsed on the Ogerpon. We're not going to see any of that because we are going to see the knockout on the third draft, which means we see a free move here from Abhyu. I think we are going to see the Calm Mind, though. It makes sense, especially with Blood Moon Ursaluna in the back. Wouldn't be opposed to a Trick Room here, actually. That would be a fantastic move here. But it is a Hyper Voice, and it does knock that Raging Bolt all the way down to about just around, after the recovery, I think it was 25% before, maybe it's like 40% now. Just it's a decent chunk. Still a rough spot for Abhyu. I mean, Urshifu, yeah, it makes sense, but there's not much you can do here. I mean, at best, you're going to get a close combat or a U-turn out in which your Ogerpon survives. Because you're going to obviously go for Follow Me. You don't really need Ogerpon at the moment. I think it's going to go for a Dragon Pulse U-turn combo to get rid of this Ogerpon, but that does mean your Rillaboom follows it, which isn't necessarily great. But at the same time, it puts you in a decent-ish position. I still think it's a pretty solid position, because if you do knock out the Rillaboom, which is at 50%, so it's like, it's a risk. Maybe you could bring in your Incineroar on the next turn, fake out the Urshifu, set up the Trick Room while Raging Bolt does absolutely nothing, and then Psychic it until it goes down. So it is all dependent on if the Psychic can knock out the Rillaboom. It is Assault Vested, so it's going to be close. But it does pick up the knockout, and that is a huge play for Abhyu. That could have just given Abhyu the full-on win, flat out, because now you have a free fake out while the Urshifu appears on the field. This Raging Bolt cannot touch the Fridrop on Abhyu's side. It's just under half health at the moment as well, with the recovery from the grassy terrain and leftovers. And the grassy terrain going to expire at the end of this turn. Pretty safe switching into Incineroar here. Like, it's just, it is, you have the play, and there's nothing that Edward can do against this. You are going to take a Dragon Pulse most likely, or another Calm Mind here from the Raging Bolt. But as long as you get rid of this Urshifu, you win the game with your Abhyu, because this Raging Bolt cannot touch Fridrop. And Fridrop absolutely can touch Raging Bolt. So yeah, very, very clear player. Fake out into the Urshifu, quick Trick Room, win. That's basically the play. And there's the fake out. The question is, are we going to see Dragon Pulse? Yeah, zero Dragon Pulse or Calm Mind, but if you are Edward, you're like, yeah, might as well get some chip damage here. You can also just, Psychic. You don't need this Trick Room. That's going to do it. Abhyu takes game number 1. It is impossible for Edward to win this now with this Rudra being Terra Fairy and Raging Bolt having 2 moves that cannot touch it. So yeah, that is, you know, if you are Abhyu here, it's just like, I think you kind of realized, okay, Terra Fairy for a driver is like incredibly useful. Gotta bring that in. Then it's Dragon Pulse, which actually does a lot of damage. It's an Assault Vest Incineroar, and that is only, I believe, +1, so it has a very offensive Raging Bolt. You also get the information of how much a basically neutral Psychic does, which is quite a bit. We're coupled with the knockoff, gonna confirm Abhyu's win there. But yeah, I think if you are Edward, you are thinking like, okay, maybe don't bring in Raging Bolt here when I have a Terra Fairy Farigiraf on the field. It just makes sense to not. I also was really interested in seeing that Blood Moon lead. It's actually good, kind of like to dangle the carrot in front of Edward's Urshifu, be like, hey, click Surging Strikes, and then you switch into your Ogerpon, or Close Combat, and then you can switch into like Flutter Mane. You know, it's a nice bait. A literal bait and switch. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the exact same 4 come in. Maybe you want to go for Flutter Mane this time, just assuming that you're not going to see Trick Room on the other side and you can kind of play the faster mode, considering you have a decent, especially with Ogerpon, you can really deal a lot of damage with Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam, and since you didn't click Trick Room, is it worth bringing in Ursaluna still? Especially because Flutter Mane, just by being on the field, cannot get hit by Thunderclap if Farigiraf's next to it, or if Ogerpon's next to it and you want to go for Follow Me. So there's a lot of options, but definitely think Farigiraf and Ogerpon are musts on Abhyu's side. On Edward's side, it's kind of, it's a little tough just solely because the Flutter Mane is kind of your answer. Like, you don't really want to bring Flutter, so you're kind of left with your 4 non-support or less supportive pieces. So you have your Urshifu, your Incineroar, your Rillaboom, and your Farigiraf, and they are like really solid together. But it's not the most solid. These types of teams usually rely on some sort of sweeper, whether it is your Hyper Voice Link for a draft, which honestly, if you're Edward now, maybe you want to go for that mode because you know you're slower than the opposing draft. But Bolt can't really sweep here. Flutter usually offers support for the other sweepers, but I think Flutter's in a interesting spot just because it can't really touch anything, because you have the Assault Vest on the Incineroar, you have a bulky Ogerpon, you have Farigiraf, which can Trick Room, and then 2-hit KO with Psychic. So it's a really rough spot. We're going to see it come out, and it doesn't have Taunt, but like, we are going to see Whimsicott though, a nice adjustment there from Abhyu, because Whimsicott's free to just do whatever, and this is where Prankster Mons have been picking up quite a bit, as well as Mental Overmoongus, because of Flutter Mane carrying Taunt everywhere. There is one downside though. Didn't bring in the Ogerpon. I'm really surprised to see that, because that Surging Strikes is going to do a lot of damage right away. There's really not much that you can do against it, especially because it is just Terra Water. It's not, it can just dodge the Moonblast, right? Personally, I think the ideal play is to just Moonblast the Urshifu and then let your Ursaluna go down. Just try and attack it, you know, don't need the Terra, just go for it. It'll probably go down, but the chances of both Pokemon getting knocked out is really slim, and then you're free to just go for a Terra Fairy Moonblast while you bring in your choice specs, Flutter Mane, and win the game. So that's what I think I would do. I guess Tailwind is okay, but a very good chance of this, especially after the Icy Wind, there is a very good chance that Ursula goes down. With whatever move that Edward clicked on his Urshifu. U-turn is the one move that would not have KO'd it. And because of that, we're going to see a free Hyper Voice on Abhyu's side. And that is really, really detrimental here, because that's going to deal a lot of damage onto the opposing Flutter, and will, you know, I mean, it's not bad. I mean, you have Grassy Glide, but I personally think you should probably just click Wood Hammer. But Hyper Voice doing 50% of the Flutter is like really kind of massive. It's still not great just solely because you do have the threat of Icy Wind. And I think, honestly, like, I would not be opposed to just protect the Ursaluna and go for the Moonblast into the opposing Flutter. Because worst case is Whimsicott gets hit with, what, a Grass move? An Ice move and the Grassy Glide might be able to pick up. So maybe you will go for Icy Wind again here, but then the Ursaluna could hit. I don't know. I feel like Moonblast plus Hyper Voice is just a solid play into this. Because you really just want one of your two to go down if you're Abhyu, because, yeah, see if Gorilla comes out, like, there's not much here that can happen. Because you just want to go into your Choice Specs Flutter already. It's like in the back, waiting in the Pokemon bag, let me in, coach, let me in! But we are going to see another switch out, this time of the Blood Moon Ursaluna into Florida. Once again, saving that Flutter Mane for later. But Light Screen, very, very nice here, because it does mean you're going to take both of the opposing Pokemon's hits really solidly. Moonblast is going to do a decent chunk into the opposing Fridrift, but it's not really all that much. It's about a quarter. It's not super bad. And you can target it. It does have Protect, but you can go for the Moonblast Psychic combo. Or you can go for the Moonblast Hyper Voice if you want to deal some spread damage, but personally, I think Psychic is just better, just to ensure that the only thing that Flutter Mane can really do to preserve itself is go for a Protect. And yeah, Psychic Moonblast gonna do quite a bit. It is gonna get picked up with the Psychic here. Whimsicott on the other side, on Abhyu's side, down to the yellow now, thanks to that Moonblast from the Flutter Mane. This is a lot of Moonblast mirrors, but the Light Screen keeping that Whimsicott up and keeping the Giraffe in the green. But really, really solid. It's not going to happen anymore because that is now a +1. It's a little more threatening, but Light Screen makes that a lot less threatening. Kind of equals out. But it does also put, I would say it puts Abhyu in a spot that isn't necessarily the nicest. You really need to double into Rillaboom. You do have Tailwind. You got to hope that this Moonblast plus Psychic knocks out, because if not, that is rough. Because regardless, it is rough actually. The Moonblast does about half, drops the special attack, which isn't really necessary. Coupled with the Psychic, which is not at +1, it's just neutral, is going to pick up though. Whew. You see Abhyu a bit relieved at that as well. Didn't expect that, I believe, and frankly, I didn't either. Meanwhile, the Hyper Voice does pick up the knockout on the Furry Giraffe here. I'm sorry, the Whimsicott on Abhyu's side here, and it does expire that Tailwind. However, you're in a really weird spot because there's been no Terra Burns yet. Which means Urshifu could just go Terra Water and go for the knockouts, and you have 2 full health on Edward's side. It is rough. It is rough because you could just Hyper Voice plus Surging into the Flutter Mane, and as long as the Urshifu Terra Waters, I think you're okay. Just got how bulky is this Flutter Mane has been what this game has been leading up to, basically. I personally think that the Terra Water, regardless of the stat spread, is going to be able to knock out here. I know a lot of the bold Flutter Manes have been really prepping for Mystic Water, not Terra, and so I think it's going to be a KO, and because of his Choice Scarf, it is going to move first. It should connect with the Flutter Mane. It does. Surging Strikes, Terra Water boosted. One hit did almost half. That is a 100% knockout right there. And that is massive. Massive, massive, massive for Edward there. Edward picking up that Flutter Mane, which has been eager to do stuff and just couldn't. Just came onto the ball and went down. It is a Psychic again. It's neutral though. And it does about 50%, coupled with the Hyper Voice to receive the 4-drop on Abhyu's side removed. And Edward all of a sudden turned the tide back in this with a vengeance. And yeah, now it is Blood Moon versus a half-health Blood Moon versus the world. Edward's going to be able to pick this one up. I'm pretty confident, unless the Ursaluna was holding a quick claw, but it's pretty much over here. And just for good measure, it is a helping hand, Terra Water, Surging Strikes into something that it is weak to. This is going to take 1 hit to knock out. Like that. Yeah. It was a really close game. I think on that one, though, you know, I would have said that the positioning was really solid for Abhyu until just the turns, the damage from Hyper Voice, and which is kind of funny because Abhyu really put a lot of focus on knocking out the Pokemon that was partnered with Furdraft without realizing that the Furdraft itself is kind of a threat. It is so scary with Hyper Voice, and you saw it right there. It did a lot of damage, even through the light screen. And so I think that is just what's a word? Good. It shows how good it is. Testament, that's the word. It's a testament to how really powerful Furdraft is if you let it steamroll like that. But I also was really surprised not to see the Ogerpon Wellspring, just because it has kind of a lot of counters here. If you're going off of the 4 from the last set, the only thing is Rillaboom, because you get if you Terra it, you can resist the Moonblast and Hyper Voice, especially under Light Screen, which is really useful. You can absorb the water attacks from Urshifu, and Rillaboom's the tough one, but that is why you have 3 other Pokemon. But regardless here, even if you decide to not bring it in, I don't think that the right call necessarily would be relying on... Oh gosh, it's tough. You have to get your Flutter Mane into a safe spot to switch in while the Tailwind is up. That is what the key is for Abhyu, I think. Because I think the game tide would have been turned in the last match if Abhyu was able to safely bring out Flutter Mane. And that's, again, a testament, I remember the word this time, to Edward knowing how to play against that. And, well, would you look at that? What was I just talking about? It's Whimsicott and Flutter Mane against 2 special attackers, which is really, really good. Especially with Tailwind and... and Light Screen too, if you want to go for it, but I think you're fine to just go for Tailwind and Terra Fairy Moonblast. You could also just not Terra Fairy, or double up, as we're going to probably see into that Fridge Draft slot. I think Abhyu picked up on the fact that Fridge Draft on Edward's side was really, really threatening in the last game and doesn't want to deal with it, especially because this Flutter Mane really doesn't have much threatening options. Taunt on the Whimsicott would be the most threatening, but even then you have options around that. And we are going to see the Terra just right away from the Flutter Mane. Yeah, I mean, it's valid. Looking, if you brought the same Pokemon in the back, which would be the Fridge and the Blood Moon, I'm not sure I would have Terra'd either one of those either. I think just going straight up Terra Flutter is really good. But the special attack drop is dicey. We are going to see the Moonblast, which is solid, and that is one benefit of speed boosting Flutter, is you're able to get special attack drop. What is the odds both the Moonblast go to special attack drop? Are we going to see a third? No, we aren't. But Trick Room comes up. Very, very, very good call on Edward's side to go for that Trick Room, because you knew Tailwind was an option. But the thing is here, it's a rough one. I actually think Light Screen plus Moonblast is correct, because... as we've learned, it's a speed boosted Flutter, which means that Flutter is fastest thing on the field. So Edward has both the fastest and slowest thing on the field in and out of Trick Room. Helping Hand Hyper Voice is the right play, but it is not boosted by Throat Spray, and it is going to get negated here by Light Screen. So the question now becomes, it could be... Oh, no, we're seeing a Helping Hand off from the Fridge Wrap, sorry. Yeah, but still, it's the right call. Moonblast here. Is it going to KO through Light Screen? It actually targets the Whimsicott, does a good 50% roughly. And that is very, very, very solid. And you lost the slow piece if you're Edward. So, you know, Fridge Wrap, it's going to have a really rough time. Without, like, this Rillaboom's gonna have a really rough time without Fridge Wrap, because you are free to switch in your own Fridge Wrap, and then at that point, like, honestly, I would just take advantage of the attacks. I would just go straight up, spam Psychic, spam Moonblast. You also have Encore, I believe, on this Whimsicott. So if your Whimsicott stays up and say Rillaboom goes for something like Grassy Glide, you can click Encore and switch into Fridge Wrap and just kind of have that, like, that in the back end of your team here. You can also swap your Flutter Mane out into Fridge Wrap, but there is one really, really solid play for Edward if that happens, and regardless, honestly, which is honestly, just go for Woodhammer. Yeah, you are fastest on the field too, so I don't think there's any downside to just going for Woodhammer. Yeah, but you really need to get rid of the Flutter Mane. That is without a doubt the hardest Pokemon on Edward's side to handle. But the good news with it is it can't really give him that much damage back. And Woodhammer not actually knocking out this Ogerpon Wellspring. And it is going to take the Flutter Mane on Edward's actually going to take a Moonblast and trade off with that Whimsicott. Yeah, definitely a solid play there. A nice, I would say, it's a decent spot. I can really... Oh man, I don't know. This is like a 50-50 here. You could actually go for the Flutter Mane. Actually, I do think that is the correct play here. Yeah, that is absolutely the correct play. Because then you have Follow Me, right? So you can Follow Me the Woodhammer and then go for the Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam, which is not -1 anymore. And so that... Oh, you can go Moonblast as well, but I think Dazzling the chip would be a bit more ideal. You kind of have to Follow Me. You could go Moonblast into the... Could go, actually, you might want to go Moonblast into the Rillaboom. But then it all comes down to, does this Flutter Mane deal enough damage to knock out the Flutter Mane on. Or it's going to protect him because it's the Flutter Mane on Abhyu's side, but Edward's Flutter is going to let him protect. Well, Abhyu going to be able to take the damage from this Rillaboom and go for Grassy Glide. Doesn't want to take Woodhammer damage. If this was a Dazzling Gleam or a Moonblast into that Rillaboom slot, this is going to deal a massive amount of damage because it's Choice Specs, Terra Fairy, Moonblast, but it connects with the Flutter Mane. I'm not a giant fan of that play. I think the Rillaboom should have been hit here. Because you are faster than I think, so you could have gotten your Hyper Voice off and then Moonblasted again while the Trick Room was still up. Maybe predicting that it was going to go for a Protect on this turn, so that way you're faster, but still, it's a rough spot now for Abhyu. Edward definitely has the upper hand, I'd say. Especially because you can just Woodhammer and get rid of that, that Flutter Mane on Abhyu's side. And there's not much that, yeah, if you do that, Abhyu is Choice Spec, so it is going to go down here if you attack it at all. And clicking Hyper Voice or Psychic, that's the beauty and the curse of spread moves. On one end, you deal lots of damage to both Pokemon. On the other end, you have things like Ghost types that aren't going to be affected by Hyper Voice, and that makes things really, really rough for you, especially when you have that Choice Scarf Urshifu in the back, and I believe Trick Room expires on this turn. So it is just a tough spot. That Woodhammer, bang! It is out of here. That Flutter Mane is going down. The Terrazul explodes, and we are now on a 1v3 situation here. And we are going to see a bit of damage onto the Rillaboom, and Taunt meaning that this Turn Draft can no longer reset the Trick Room if it were to go for it, which, yeah, would have been the win con here, I think, for Abhyu. Now you're in a tough spot. Yeah, see, now it's rough, because you can't go for much. I think Hyper Voice, you kind of, it's a decent play. We're going to see a Terra here. I don't really know why I guess it makes sense to Terra Fairy. I was thinking you'd save that Terra for the Urshifu, so you don't go down to Hyper Voices, but I think at this point, either way, it's 3-on-1 with all your Pokemon being faster than Abhyu. You can afford the Hyper Voice damage on Flutter Mane. And dropping the special attack just for the heck of it. Woodhammer at half health. I think it's going to be in range. It is. Edward Gold takes game number 3 and the match. Whew, alrighty, take a deep breath, everyone. That was intense. You know, it is all about timing in Pokemon and getting reads right as well, and just kind of getting into people's heads, and that is a very good example of that. Lots of really great protects from Edward there. Both teams super fun to play. I mean, you have the Bolt Balance core, which is like the most iconic core in Regulation F, and Abhyu playing a really fun Blood Moon team. But yeah, Edward called some really good protects and was able to outlast the Tailwind and outlast the Trick Room, and so Edward is the king of speed today. But stick around later, we're going to be back after a quick break for our top 8 top cut match. So I know Dragonite's going to be extreme speeding back into this chair for that, so